Good afternoon and welcome into Contending Football. This is James Flippin, and I'm coming at you with the latest installment of our National Football League program that takes a look at everything that's going on in and around the NFL. Of course, it is Week 18. We've reached the final entry, the finale, if you will. If you want to, look at the teams that aren't going to go on to the postseason, obviously we'll spend some time on that. This is James Flippin here on the Contender. We're also broadcasting on Colorcast. Excited to be broadcasting on both our Contender app and the Colorcast app. So go ahead and check those out. If you have not yet downloaded either, check out the Colorcast app and also the Contender app. And we're live on Twitter. We're live on Facebook. We're live on YouTube. We're also taking your phone calls, 855-908-5668, 855-908-5668. This is the lead into what's known as Black Monday in the NFL, when head coaches get fired because of how badly they've done leading their football team. Well, today we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to do Insufferable Sunday. Insufferable Sunday leading into Black Monday. So basically what we're doing here is all the situations in the NFL that just cannot be allowed to endure. Okay? All the situations in the NFL that are so bad that they actually need to be considered insufferable at this point. And my apologies if you hear some Slack noises coming through on my broadcast here today. New setup, new tech setup. I'm using a different computer, and I haven't yet figured out all the different apps and such and what's making noise and all that kind of thing. So my apologies if you hear some odd little notifications going on throughout the program, but hopefully that'll be kept to a minimum. Like I said, we're live on Colorcast with their Hot Takes program. We're also live here on the Contender app, and we're taking your phone calls, 855-908-5668, 855-908-5668. If you want to join the show at any point, go ahead and give us a call. We'll get you fired up. But we got to start out with, like I said, Insufferable Sunday. So what do I mean by that? Insufferable. Exactly what you think. This is a situation or situations, we picked out 7, where this kind of thing just cannot stand, man. This cannot continue. These are disgraceful situations. We love the National Football League, right? We love football. We're red-blooded Americans. We're all about the game. We're all about the chance at glory. Want to see our team do well, all this kind of stuff. That's all well and good. But this is about not the teams that have a chance of doing that right now. This is about the teams that are so bad that they need to make wholesale changes, okay? So let's start right out with one of the teams that we cover very closely here as, within the framework of the Contender, okay? The Chicago Bears. The Chicago Bears are absolutely included in the insufferable category. Now, I don't have to explain to you the various reasons why that's true. In the draft, trying to figure out the quarterback position for so many years, bad free agency signings, just never quite getting over the hump, having gone to the one Super Bowl, obviously, since they did win in the 80s. But other than that, it's been nothing but mid for those Chicago Bears. And, of course, all our TikTok fans out there, they know what I'm talking about when I say mid. Makes me feel very old to make that reference, by the way. But at the same time, we plow forward. So the question that I have for the Bears and just the situation in general, and this is kind of a theme you'll have me repeating again and again as we get into this today, the Insufferable Sunday. How is a team from Green Bay better and higher class than a team from Chicago? I've been to Chicago, right? Never been to Green Bay, never been to Wisconsin. It's cute to talk and think about, the shares of ownership that people get for, living in Green Bay or whatever. And, they sell parking spots in their driveway if you're going to go to Lambeau Field and stuff. It's a cute story, right? It's a cute thing about the NFL. But when you really think about it, and, you go back to, the Leatherhead days, right? Like the Green Bay Packers, you know what I mean? It's legendary. But what about the Chicago Bears? You know what I mean? Legendary in their own right, a world-class franchise One of them teams that goes back to the earliest days of the NFL. And Chicago is the second city. It's the city of broad shoulders. It's Chicago is, you know what I mean? Like, it's a big time American metropolis, huge powerhouse of business and industry and all this kind of stuff. Chicago should be absolutely blowing out of the water Green Bay when it comes to facilities, spending, coaching, scouting. Instead, we have word of Olin Kreutz, one of the best linemen in Chicago Bears history, by the way. He reported that he was offered a job for $15 an hour to be a coach. $15 an hour to be a coach with Chicago Bears. That's Chicago's minimum wage, by the way. Chicago's minimum wage is what the Bears offered Olin Kreutz to be one of their offensive line coaches. Now, by the way, I requested an interview with Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot about this whole situation with Chicago Bears and the whole thing. And she said yes originally, but that's only because she thought that she misread the email. She thought that I was Lil Flip. When she saw that it was James Flippin and she saw my photo, she canceled the interview. I don't know why. I have no idea why, but she did. I tried to get to the bottom of the situation with Lori Lightfoot, but it didn't work out. 855-908-5668, 855-908-5668. We're live on Colorcast. We're live on The Contender. My name is James Flippin. You can follow me on Twitter at Jamadrop, Jamadrop. So we move on from the Bears being one of the 7 most insufferable situations in the NFL here on Insufferable Sunday. And we move to another iconic, or once iconic, NFC franchise. And that would be the New York Giants. Now, the New York Giants have some easy moves to make this offseason as they make an attempt at turning things around. Okay, I'm actually going to talk about a few big moves that I'm advocating the Giants to make as we get into the show here today. But, we'll have to just kind of play that by ear because some of them don't necessarily involve the Giants directly. It's another one of the teams that I'm going to talk about today. So anyway, with the Giants, the easy move, right? The easy thing that they can do right away is getting rid of Dave Gettleman as their GM, firing Joe Judge as their head coach, and hiring Jim Harbaugh to restore the glory, restore some sanity at least, to the New York Giants franchise. And then after that happens, owner John Mara needs to go on a 5 to 10 year sabbatical. His choice. I'd prefer the 10, but I'll take the 5. A 5 to 10 year sabbatical for John Mara. The guy has destroyed one of sports' preeminent franchises. Now, no matter who you are, what you say, whatever you want to do, if you follow the NFL, you know that the Giants, ever since turning things around in the 70s, which of course was just an inexplicable era of awful football that, saw the Giants just embarrass themselves over and over and over again. But ever since they hired George Young and he turned the franchise around during that period in the 70s, the team has been solid, a solid team, never too bad. Obviously 4 Super Bowl wins. That's better than solid. 5 NFC championship wins since that time in the 70s. Basically, 500 more, a lot of the time. Otherwise, a loyal fan base. You start there. Because getting rid of Giant Stadium was a sin. It was iconic in that sense. It went through that rebirth in the 70s. It represented the move from New York City and Yankee Stadium to New Jersey and the suburbs where the team flourished. The Bears could learn something there, by the way. And then the Giants tore it down. They tore down Giant Stadium. Was that to enact some sort of major upgrade or, kind of enact some huge fixes or make it like a much better fan experience? Well, the most you can say about MetLife Stadium is that it has more bathrooms. The bathrooms are better. But otherwise, no. MetLife Stadium kind of sucks compared to Giant Stadium. It's quiet. It's soulless. It's generic. And really, why did the Giants do it? Why did they tear down Giant Stadium in the first place? Luxury boxes, the desire to put in more of them, and personal seat licenses. Personal seat licenses. That's what it was all about. It had red seats, one of the Giants' colors. Now they're gray. It had juice. It had feeling. Now it's like a corporate business conference that happens to have a game going on. They should just call it the Meadowlands Convention Center or something like that. It's time to blow it up. Time to blow it up for those Giants and hire Jim Harbaugh. Whatever it takes, then get Mara out. And I know that's not realistic, but I'm just saying, as a fan that's seen ownership destroy teams that they root for, I'm telling you, this guy is the guy and his brother who have overseen the debacle, the trashing of a great franchise. I mean, think about it. The Giants right now are the worst team in the NFL. Maybe the Houston Texans and the Jacksonville Jaguars are worse. Think about that statement. One of the flagship franchises in the NFL, maybe they're better than the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Houston Texans. By the way, both of which are in the Insufferable Sunday category. We'll get there soon enough. 855-908-5668. If you want to chime in on the conversation on the phone, we're also broadcasting here on Colorcast. And so if you want to chime in on the chat, feel free to do that. I will read your chats aloud here on our program. So, yeah, you got to get Mara out with the Giants because has anyone gotten off easier than him? He canned Tom Coughlin unceremoniously. If you remember, there was clearly bad blood there. No handshake after Coughlin left the podium, that final press conference. This is a two-time Super Bowl winner, maybe the team's best or second best head coach of all time, fired. And who? For who? Big suit Ben McAdoo, Pat Shurmur, and Joe Judge. Again, all three of those guys, with all due respect, Ben McAdoo, Pat Shurmur, Joe Judge. Who? And if you said who, you'd be right. Beyond unacceptable that a team like the Giants, again, a four-time Super Bowl winning franchise, one of the best franchises up until this recent point in the NFL, period. I don't care what you say. Not anymore, and I acknowledge that. I'm not trying to sit here and deny what I've seen with my own eyes. I can't even watch the games. But you're telling me that John Mara and hiring these no-name, also-ran coaches is not the reason or a big reason? It is. You're the worst team in the NFL. Maybe the Jaguars or Texans are better. To say that aloud, as a Giants fan, embarrassing isn't even strong enough a word. Not even strong enough a word. The Houston Texans are next up on our Insufferable Sunday. Here's the thing about the Houston Texans. Could you be any more bland or kind of useless? They still feel to me like a team that someone like created in Madden. If you play the Madden video game, and may John Madden rest in peace. It's like if you created a team and then just kind of forgot about them. Like maybe you wanted to kick out your most hated rival. You're a Bears fan, you're playing Madden, you create a team and get rid of the Green Bay Packers or something like that. Oh, okay. Well, you know what? It has to at least be in the center part of the country. The video game is going to give you trouble if you don't give it a team in the central or something like that. Fine. Texas. What are the colors? I don't know. Red, white, and blue. It's Texas. What is it? San Antonio, Austin? No, it's Houston. All right, fine. I guess put a cattle head on it or something. Yeah, skull, whatever. The Texans need to truly join the ranks of the NFL by trading Deshaun Watson for just an absolute haul, just a ton of picks. Pick up a few first-round picks. And they should be insisting that the NFL clear his status so that they can trade him. And I don't know what that means for Deshaun Watson. Again, you've heard him connected maybe to like the Philadelphia Eagles. Well, and this makes me absolutely sick, but guess who has 3 first-round picks this year? So the Eagles might well make a very, interesting trade partner for those Houston Texans if we know for sure that Deshaun Watson is actually going to play. And whatever that whole situation is, can get finalized or whatever. They really need to do that. And then just as many picks as possible for Houston, start to rebuild. They've got that Patriots dude who kind of wormed his way into the GM role there, Nick Caserio. He better get it right, or, he's going to obviously just fall flat on his face and never get another job in the NFL, because this is a big, big time and opportunity in the NFL history of the Houston Texans, because I'd hate to trade Deshaun Watson if I'm them. I've talked about it on this show before that he's one of the best QBs in the league, but clearly he doesn't want to play there anymore. That's not going to work. So you go ahead and trade him. Now, this was from NFL.com, saying that the Texans will evaluate their entire football operation, including the future of head coach David Culley, in the coming days as they embark on the critical offseason that could yield that long-awaited trade of Deshaun Watson. This before free agency opens in March, sources say. So the idea would be that they trade him before free agency. Which makes a lot of sense, I guess, because then you're kind of cornering the market. You're doing it and trying to set the value point on quarterbacks before Jimmy Garoppolo goes somewhere, or, whatever happens with Baker Mayfield or whatever it may be. Talks about how Caserio is overhauling the roster and the salary cap. Culley has the building's respect as a person, it says. Would be difficult for any coach to win in this position. That's definitely true. Some players have grown frustrated with in-game decisions and communication issues. I mean, I'd love to know who are these sources if it's players saying shit. Like, give me a break. Whatever. All right. So anyway, the Texans are definitely a situation that qualifies under Insufferable Sunday. Moving on from that expansion franchise, we talk about the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, the Jacksonville Jaguars are in a situation right now where the whole Urban Meyer thing could not have gone any worse. Couldn't have gone any worse. I don't know that really Trevor Lawrence's rookie year could have gone any worse. I was thinking about like who I was going to mention, and we'll do this a little later in terms of the end of year awards, trying to figure out the MVP, the defensive player of the year, rookie of the year, all this kind of stuff. And I thought to myself, wow, who's just definitely not even in the discussion for rookie of the year? It's Trevor Lawrence, because of how bad he's been and how bad the Jaguars have been. So the Jaguars are at a big turning point here. Clearly Shad Khan's idea of bringing in Urban Meyer just was a disaster, complete disaster. And they need to hire a new head coach. So I think the Jaguars ought to hire Byron Leftwich. Now, he's been the offensive coordinator for a few years now with the Tampa Bay Bucks, and he's got Tom Brady's endorsement for whatever that does or doesn't do for you. But he's the only guy, when you think back on like the history of the Jacksonville Jaguars, at least at the quarterback position, right? All due respect to David Garrard and Blake Bortles. The only dude that reps any Jaguars pride. Oh, and Mark Brunell, by the way. Shout to Mark Brunell. But the only guy that kind of reps that like era of extended legitimacy that they had for a time is Byron Leftwich. So you take that into account. You also think about the fact that you need to have a young offensive mind at the coaching position right here, because that's the way the NFL is going. It's all about moving the ball consistently. you look at the young, successful up-and-coming coaches, the Cliff Kingsburys, the Sean McVay, Nick Siriannis of the world. These are offensive minds that create dynamic. Kellen Moore, for example, that could work for the Jaguars. But I like Leftwich because of the thing I mentioned, his connection to the franchise. The last thing the Jaguars should do, is bring in one of these guys that's considered like a disciplinarian or a good locker room builder or whatever. Like, just no. It's a waste of time. It does nothing for you. Totally overrated to go that route. As a Giants fan, again, with Joe Judge, I'll just double down on that whole point. And we'll see what happens with the Detroit Lions. But I think there's a lot to be said for, their situation being less than rosy. But speaking of the Lions, no on Jim Caldwell. That's a retread. No on Dan Quinn. No on Bill O'Brien. You need that young offensive mind. If you look at the young up-and-coming coaches, those are those offensive guys, okay? And you don't, with the NFL too, this is something I feel strongly about. You don't hire a discipline or like old school guy, okay? It's bullshit. I'm so over it now. These players, they get with the program or they get cut. It's not the NBA. It's not Major League Baseball. These aren't guaranteed contracts. The draft is the lifeblood of the NFL, and those are guys who are young, hungry, and aren't necessarily making a ton of money. So there's too much focus on stupid shit here with this stuff. Because a guy like Byron Leftwich can help design an offensive system to maximize the Jags' skill set, hopefully get Trevor Lawrence on the right track, which you just absolutely need to figure out a way to do if you're the Jaguars right now. Plus, he would give some juice to the fan base as a former franchise quarterback. Teams need to move the ball consistently, period. Again, I hate to keep going back to the fact that I'm a long-suffering Giants fan here, but if you ever were forced with like one of those devices that held your eyes open or something like that to consistently watch Giants games, you would know that there's nothing worse than a team that has no plan, no hope, nothing going on offensively. You got to move the ball. That's the NFL. WFT, they're next up on our Insufferable Sunday category. Now, hate to do it, but, it's a long-standing thing where they just continue to let down their fans, continue to not get over the hump. They've got the whole, like, naming thing that's coming up here. So just because we don't know which way that's going to go, and that's almost kind of like an ultimate Black Monday thing, like, you canceled your team name. Your team name got fired. So we already know that happened. Now the search is on and has been for some time for your new name. So insufferable in the sense that they haven't come up with the name yet. And, we'll see what that's going to be. But also this, when you think about Washington football, right? Never in my lifetime, and that goes back now almost, 36 years going on, it'll be 37 this summer. WFT never had a quarterback for any kind of consistent period. They had the 1 year of RG3 and his magic, the semi-solid little Kirk Cousins era. But over my lifetime, and going back even further, really, the WFT, Admirals, Commanders, People's Teams, Skins, whatever, that's what we'll call them here, I think. The Admirals, Warriors, Commanders, Team, Skins. No franchise quarterback. No, for no decade period franchise quarterback. Maybe going back to Theismann. That's stunning. We're talking decades. I'm almost 40. I'm 40. No excuse. So what do the WFT front office types need to do? Well, it just so happens that this is an extremely interesting and extremely volatile quarterback market coming up here in the offseason, where there's going to be a lot of moving pieces. We already talked about Deshaun Watson. Russell Wilson. Now the rumor is that he's not going to be traded from Seattle. But you know what? Who knows? I will say that it never really made a lot of sense from a cap perspective for Russell Wilson to get traded, and that goes along with all the assets you'd have to give up to make it happen. So, I don't know. We'll have to say. But I believe we should still be here on Colorcast. checking on my, let's see, another app has interrupted your cast. I'm getting a notification here that something's going on with my color cast, but I hope we're okay. Hopefully we're okay there. Anyway, broadcasting on Colorcast, broadcasting on the Contender. We appreciate you hanging with us, and you can call us up if you want to. 855-908-5668. My name is James Flippin. 855-908-5668. Okay, so we talked about the situation with quarterback and WFT. This is what they need to do. They got to make a trade. Deshaun Watson, maybe. Rumor is he's not interested in going to Washington, but, we'll see about that. Russell Wilson. Can you make that happen? Is that a possibility? How about this? Aaron Rodgers. Hey, why not? Could happen, right? You're going to have to give up a lot in draft capital, but it's possible that if Rodgers basically goes to Green Bay and says, you know what, I'm out, then maybe that's where you get the opportunity to go after him. To a lesser extent, right? These are some guys that I think WFT should think long and hard about, but I'm not really sure if it does or doesn't make sense. How about Matt Ryan? Try to pry him away from Atlanta. Take a shot with what is still a, solid defense. Maybe Antonio Gibson is better and healthier next year. You're pairing, obviously, Matt Ryan with Terry McLaurin and hopefully taking him to that next level. Obviously, that takes, your offense to a new height. There's also Jimmy Garoppolo, a guy that we keep mentioning. How about this? How about Baker Mayfield for Washington? I'm telling you, if the price is right and if his shoulder's cleared, you could do worse. Because, again, I don't necessarily like Baker Mayfield for Cleveland right now. But change of scenery, something, to be said for, maybe he takes his game to a different level, getting out of that Cleveland situation. I don't even know what I'm really necessarily referring to there, but it's almost like you put Baker Mayfield and his ego and his shine in a bigger market, he might flourish. I just have a feeling about that. So if the price is right, and if his left shoulder is kind of like all good following surgery or whatever, I could see Baker Mayfield in WFT for sure. Or as I should say, the Admirals, Warriors, Commanders, People's Team skins. And maybe, just maybe, the Las Vegas Raiders would be willing to move on from Derek Carr. And could you trade to bring in Derek Carr to Washington if the Raiders decide they're going to kind of rebuild, bringing in their new coach or whatever it may be? And, really, the Raiders almost could have been included in this Insufferable Sunday category, but, they didn't quite make the cut. A team that did make my Insufferable Sunday cut coming up next here are those Cleveland Browns. Now, in my opinion, the Browns are being held back by a quarterback who is kind of larger than the team himself, right? Baker Mayfield, first overall pick, TV star, got all the big commercials, all this kind of stuff. Browns are on the cusp here. The Cleveland Browns, I feel like, are on the cusp of being a really, really good football team that could make some noise in the playoffs if things went right for them. Strong defense, really great running game, limited talent at receiver. They got to get out from Baker Mayfield. They got to get out from under it because it's just not the right situation for them. Now, again, we read from NFL.com earlier. We'll do it again. Quoting NFL.com here, the Browns will head into the offseason with plans to retain Baker Mayfield as their quarterback for 2022. That's quoting sources. Coming off last year's playoff run, Cleveland stumbled 7-9 this year. Mayfield tried to battle through a significant number of injuries. That's true. Throwing 7 interceptions in his last 3 games. And again, not even to just say like, I keep going back and forth on Baker Mayfield. I kind of do in a way, because one of the things that I've said is he's had brutal injuries this year. And over and over and over again, it was like, oh yeah, he's playing on Sunday. Really? Didn't he tear his shoulder? What's going on? Again, not his throwing shoulder, but you still get the point. He's not going to play against the Bengals today. Mayfield, rumors are that basically he maybe wants to move on, but barring a dramatic shift, it doesn't appear either development's on the horizon. So this is just the way I feel about the Browns. They need a game manager quarterback type. They need a Ryan Tannehill type of guy who can make their running game even stronger, who can, hopefully cut down on the turnovers, and who can kind of just like keep the keys in the engine running to get the field and the clock churned up a little bit, and then also obviously, help your defense out. And like we said, the Browns have potentially what you could say is, and probably would say, is among the NFL's, if not the top best running games. So here's a thought for those Browns, and I'm sure it wouldn't necessarily be extremely popular, but it's just something I think about. And again, I reference the fact that as a Giants fan, I'm all over this type of thing. I think the Browns should think long and hard about trading for Daniel Jones, provided his neck checks out, and then just let Baker walk. Here's why. Daniel Jones is not a mega talent in this league, but he's unassuming. He's hardworking. His teammates love him, and he can be a very solid game manager, Ryan Tannehill type for those Cleveland Browns. He cut down on his turnovers this year. When he was healthy, he was playing, somewhat better football in that respect. He cut down on the turnovers. Still a bit of an issue, but, getting better. He looked great, for example, against the New Orleans Saints, just the one game, but, you throw that out there. That's on the road against a tough defense. And, he'd be solid. He'd be solid for a Cleveland team that, looking at him, he's still cheap, allows Cleveland to kind of evaluate, maybe get him on the cheap on a re-sign type deal, because he's not going to be considered among the top quarterbacks in the league. And then Baker, the TV star, meanwhile pushing for this $30 million per year or whatever, let him go and get it elsewhere and continue to fill out the rest of your team and utilize the rest of your cap towards other things. 855-908-5668, 855-908-5668. We're talking Insufferable Sunday here on Contending Football. My name is James Flippin. You can follow me on Twitter at JamaDrop and download the Contender app. Tell you a little bit about the Contender app here in just a second, but if you check the Contender app out on your iPhone or Android in the App Store or Google Play, it's the Contender with a K. And we'll talk about that in just a second. But we will finish up our Insufferable Sunday first, because the Detroit Lions are up next. Now, this is similar to the Browns, but also a little bit different. I, as a Giants fan, have said that I like this kid, Kenny Pickett, out of Pittsburgh. He's also a Jersey kid, by the way. He's got some moxie, got some playing-making ability. I would love to see him in Giants blue. I'd love it. But it would be a mistake to not see him end up in Honolulu blue. Look, the Lions had the franchise guy, right? Matt Stafford. I love Stafford. Great quarterback. But here, as the Lions currently stand, you have a lot of picks, plenty of time, plenty of draft capital with which you can take, edge rushers in the second or third round. You don't have to punt on the quarterback position. In fact, you shouldn't. I read all these mock drafts that have them taking, Aiden Hutchinson or Thibodeau or whatever the other guy's name is at edge. Why? What's so great about having a guy who can pressure the quarterback, one guy along a defensive line, when you have the potential ability to get a guy who's going to be your guy at quarterback, which you need to have? It's a prerequisite in the NFL. It's not like a luxury or something you can kind of like hope takes your team to the next level. It's an absolute prerequisite. You have to have a quarterback, one that can make plays for you on a semi-regular basis and not just be absolutely awful. So, to me, if I'm the Detroit Lions, the way you get out from Insufferable Sunday status is you take Kenny Pickett with that second overall pick. Don't mess around. Don't hope to get like a quarterback mid-draft, which is very, very unlikely. There aren't really any trades, I don't think, that make sense for them, And, Jimmy Garoppolo, I don't think makes sense for them. So get the draft's best quarterback. Pray like heck that he's good. Pray like heck that he's not Sam Darnold or Dwayne Haskins or Josh Rosen or whatever. and just, hope against hope that that's your guy. Because what else can you do, really? Trevor Lawrence was supposed to be an absolute sure thing, right? If you talk to anybody, he was as much a sure thing as John Elway or Andrew Luck. So far, it hasn't worked out that way. But Ryan Leaf wasn't a sure thing either, was he? So you really never know. That's the Insufferable 7. Just missing the cut, by the way, as we turn off our NFL Films music. Just missing the cut. Carolina and the whole Matt Rule, Sam Darnold, there he is again. Awful morass down there in Charlotte. We also, of course, have been hearing that maybe, McCaffrey, Christian McCaffrey, could be on the trading block, which is interesting, but I don't really know how much you're going to get for him. It's just crazy, right? The NFL is what it is right now. How much are those running backs really worth? Now, in a second, I'll talk about how much I think they factor into the MVP race and should, those top running backs. But that's a different conversation. When you talk about the construction of an NFL roster, you're factoring in the cap, how much money these guys cost, and relative to other things. Can you get somebody in the draft that provides a high level of production and all this kind of thing, as opposed to maybe, keeping somebody into their second free agency contract or whatever it may be. But you have to have the money to spend on certain positions, for example. So you have to have your quarterback, Christian McCaffrey. I just don't know how much a team is really going to be willing to give up for him. Again, you say to yourself, oh, well, maybe a team that's just on the cusp of winning or something like that. Yeah, but who is that, first of all? And second of all, how are they going to have the cap space to take that on either? And is their draft pick package going to be that attractive or whatever? So it's a tough situation for Carolina. You also heard some rumblings that their owner has, maybe some second thoughts about having hired Rule and all the money he gave him, the years, whatever. Anyway, suffice it to say, Carolina just missed the Insufferable 7 cut. Also just missing the cut, Seattle, the Seahawks, their whole ugly Pete Carroll, Russell Wilson divorce thing. You hate to see this. This is a pair of guys, a head coach quarterback combo that won a Super Bowl together, had a chance at almost like a mini run, a mini dynasty. And it just obviously never happened for them. How crazy when you think about changing moments, right? Like watershed moments in the NFL. You got to put that Marshawn Lynch, not running the ball with him at the goal line, and Russell Wilson throwing that interception. It's just an absolute watershed moment in the NFL, and it's really crazy. Really crazy. Okay. Also just missing the cut for the Insufferable 7. Minnesota, the Minnesota Vikings. And I'm sorry, because, they're not even necessarily that bad, really. And I've been one to defend Kirk Cousins and talk about how I kind of like him. But the Minnesota perpetual mediocrity. I'm going to put this out there. This is almost a formal petition, kind of like my naming, not my style guide, my naming convention, okay, for the NFL. Because, there's things like this. There's the mighty Anaheim Ducks, the Ohio State University, right? I want it to be known as the mediocre Minnesota Vikings until further notice. They're just mediocre. How about this? The term I used earlier to talk about the Bears. The Minnesota Vikings are very mid. Very mid. Never won a Super Bowl before. Always kind of good. Have had plenty of teams that were really, really good, especially in the regular season. But just the mediocre Minnesota Vikings. Until further notice. That's how they'll be known on this program. By the way, this is our last episode of the year, and I'd just like to really thank all you guys for tuning in and checking us out, whether it be on the podcast after the fact on the Contender, or if you're watching live on Facebook or Twitter or whatever. Don't forget the phone lines are open, so if you want to get in, you're welcome to do so. 855-908-5668. 855-908-5668. So, yeah, the mediocre Minnesota Vikings until further notice. Or if you want to go with that, the mid Minnesota Vikings. Denver, the Denver Broncos, going to put that out there fresh off their loss last night to the division rival Chiefs. They almost snuck in here because, again, they may be firing their head coach, Vic Fangio. They have no franchise quarterback. Drew Lock's not the answer there. They traded away Von Miller kind of unceremoniously this past year. Just generally pretty mediocre in Denver these days. Again, there's that word, mediocre. And they're beyond that. I feel like the Denver Broncos, much like a Giants, much like a Bears, frankly, Seahawks kind of in that same thing. Like, you should be beyond these kind of like, mediocre 5-year stretches as a franchise. It's beneath you. It's beneath you, Denver. It sure as hell should be beneath the Giants. And I think at this point it should be beneath the Denver Broncos, like I said, and the Bears. So anyway. All right, moving on. We finish up with our mediocre segment that was discussing the Insufferable Sunday, and we get into this, the Dolphins and Colts. Yes, I wanted to talk about this. As I started off with, I'm a Giants fan, and one of the teams that could potentially make a run at Russell Wilson are those Philadelphia Eagles, because they have 3 first-round picks. Now, how did that happen? They made a trade last year with Miami, and Miami moved up in the draft. And so the Eagles netted a first-round pick this year. Then they made a trade in the offseason, before that, to move Carson Wentz to Indianapolis. And in doing so, they got a conditional first-round pick that, because Carson Wentz played the entire season, basically, I don't even know if he missed any time, barely any, the Eagles netted a first-round pick out of that trade. So they have their own first-round pick, a Dolphins first-round pick, and a Colts first-round pick. Now, as a Giants fan, that makes me sick. But I just like to say, shout out to those Dolphins for that, like, totally out of nowhere 8-game, whatever it was, winning streak that they went on. Big shout out to those Indianapolis Colts, and I'll be pulling for them today as they try to make a push for the playoffs, because they had great season, or, relatively solid seasons. And it means that those Eagles draft picks are not as good. I'm telling you, when I was looking at the mock drafts, and the Eagles weren't doing well at that point, they obviously went on their own run, kind of worsening their first round pick. And then the Colts picked things up. The Dolphins went on their huge winning streak. 4 round picks in the top 15. I was like, this is a nightmare. Just an absolute nightmare as a Giants fan. So I would just like to shout out those Eagles, frankly, also the Colts, and also the Dolphins, for putting together a solid 2021-2022 season, and in doing so, avoiding the disaster scenario that was for me, where those Eagles had 3 first-round picks in the top 15. So, good. And that's, by the way, that's the first time still. I mean, there's still first-round picks. I mean, geez. That's the first time since 2013 that anybody's had 3 first-round picks. Back then, it was the Minnesota Vikings. All right, 855-908-5668. My name's James Flippin. This is Contending Football. I told you we would talk about the Contender app. The Contender app, that's the Contender with a K. You'll want to download that and check us out every morning from 6 to 9 Central Time, 7 to 10 on the East Coast. 6 to 9 Central Time, you have Pat the Designer and P Kid hosting their morning show. Now, this is very exciting for us here at the Contender, because it's our first daily program, and it's a morning show, which is also great. That's big for any sort of, radio, audio, content platform, whatever you want to call it. So check us out on the app. That's the Contender with a K. And if you listen to it from 6 to 9 in the morning Central Time, you will hear Pat the Designer and the Windy City Breeze doing their 3-hour program as they basically break down everything, sports and what's going on at that moment in sports. Yes, they're in Chicago. It's definitely got a Chicago flavor to it, and they're Chicago sports guys. So that's kind of how we're putting together our brand, is that basically if you are a Chicago sports person, but, even if you're not, I mean, they're covering the big sports stories from a national perspective and also plenty of local stuff. But the whole idea behind the Contender is that it's a localized sports talk platform. So, you're looking for somebody who covers your teams and thinks about sports the same way that you do from a regional perspective. Go to the Contender and check us out. And right now we cover DC sports, Washington, DC, and also Chicago. Okay, my picks for the NFL awards this year. Here we go. NFL MVP. I talked about it a few weeks ago. I'm sticking to my guns. Jonathan Taylor, running back, Indianapolis Colts. Now, call me Hub Arkish, but without the vaccine Karen status. Okay, because I could care less if Aaron Rodgers got the shot or not. But I'm not so easily impressed and so easily swayed by whoever the quarterback of the year is winning the MVP. Because the way I look at it, right, when you look at the stats of the top quarterbacks in the NFL, right, let's just call them out as NFL.com has it listed with player stats here, okay? And I don't know exactly this. I think this is ranking it. This is ranking it by passing yards, okay? Passing yards, and then they got the other stats here, but at least it's ranked 1 through 10 or whatever by passing yards. So you've got, and I'll just read the names out for you, okay? That's the order they're in. Tom Brady, Pat Mahomes, Matt Stafford, Justin Herbert, Derek Carr, Joe Burrow, Dak Prescott, Josh Allen, Aaron Rodgers. All tremendous, tremendous quarterbacks. All guys that, you put their stats in a vacuum, they're great. You know what I mean? They're great offensive production machines. Brady has 40 touchdowns. Yes, he was picked off 12 times. How many passing yards? 4,990. By the way, that's 1,000 more passing yards than Aaron Rodgers, for example. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what stats you prefer or what you focus on. For example, Aaron Rodgers, 35 touchdowns, only picked off 4 times this year. That's a tremendous number. That's awesome, right? Really, really great. He's obviously one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, if not the best. But how about this for, Dak Prescott's numbers, for example? 4,400 passing yards, 500 basically more on the season than Aaron Rodgers. He also has 37 touchdowns passing. Happens to be 2 more than Rodgers, but whatever. Yeah, he was picked off 10 times. Okay. How about Josh Allen? Now, we're not even talking about what he does with his legs and the rushing game that he brings to the table, but he's got 4,100 yards passing, 34 touchdowns. Yes, he's been picked off 15 times. Again, the ding on the resume when comparing these top quarterbacks right now to Aaron Rodgers, the only guy who's even close to him in terms of not throwing interceptions is Kirk Cousins, who quietly, as I pointed out earlier in this program, weeks ago, has had a very, very solid year. Right behind Rodgers in passing yards, 30 touchdowns in his own right. And yeah, he's got a lot of tremendous weapons. But, how about Pat Mahomes? 37 yards, 37 touchdowns passing in a year where he kind of struggled early on, right? 4,800 yards passing. Matthew Stafford, his first year with the LA Rams, 4,600 yards passing, 38 touchdowns. I mean, these are sparkling numbers. We're not even talking about Justin Herbert or Joe Burrow, 2 of the great young players at quarterback in the league, or Derek Carr, perpetually one of the most underrated players maybe in the NFL. They're all great. You're going to ask me to try to pick which one of them is like the best at a totally stacked position that like is a prerequisite to succeeding in the NFL? You need to have somebody at that position or else your team's going to suck. So that's why when I see a guy like Jonathan Taylor, who a position where it's a bunch of also-rans, a position that by and large is filled by like 3 different guys on the roster, maybe somebody who can catch a pass. This person was really good between the tackles. This person's got a little more speed on the outside or whatever. Or you have Jonathan Taylor, a Swiss Army knife, a guy who is own in some instances. Now, look, that's a tremendous offensive line that the Indianapolis Colts have, and I don't mean to do that. I really don't. That is a prerequisite in its own right to having any prayer of having a good running game. But like I said, most of the time, it's a thing where you go RBBC, running back by committee. These guys, Jonathan Taylor, they don't exist anymore. Derrick Henry, for example. Derrick Henry was well on his way to being the MVP. We wouldn't even be having this discussion right now about any of these quarterbacks or whatever, with what he would have done, what he would have continued to do if he didn't break his foot. So, for me, if you're going to be the MVP as the quarterback in the National Football League, you better throw for over 5,000 yards. You better be right near 50 touchdowns. You better be sub 10 interceptions, underneath 10, or be a major, major rushing threat, like a Lamar Jackson or a Josh Allen or, whatever that may be. Michael Vick back in the day. And of course, Michael Vick never rose to that status of MVP, despite being such a major rushing threat. Lamar Jackson has won it before. So MVP, that's that. Defensive Rookie of the Year. I'm going Micah Parsons. Honestly, he's a candidate for Defensive Player of the Year overall. So you just can't go with anybody else. It's Micah Parsons. The Cowboys' tremendous drafting continues, and absolute game changer for them. As they go on a run here in the playoffs, you better believe Micah Parsons is going to be a big part of it. Offensive Rookie of the Year, I'm going to go Jamar Chase. I think he solidified it over Mac Jones with just that absolute explosion of a performance that Jamar Chase had last week. He solidified it now for me over Mac Jones. And again, the same quarterback argument applies here, right? Yes, Mac Jones has had a tremendous rookie year. Yes, he's helped lead the Patriots into that, playoff area. But that doesn't change the argument that I was just making about how the league set up for quarterbacks to succeed. And the people that kind of separate themselves more are people of a different variety. And for me, in this case, that's Jamar Chase. Defensive Player of the Year, I'm going to go TJ Watt. You coming up here, Kat? My cat Beansy is here in the studio. And I thought maybe she was going to jump up, but I guess she's not. Defensive Player of the Year, TJ Watt. He could tie or break, the sack record held by Mike Strahan today. So here, come on. Come on, you want to come up on camera? Look, say hi. Say hi to the camera, Beans. Beans is here, so you're a little low. She's participating in the broadcast. My cat Beans. Anyway, lost my train of thought. Yeah, TJ Watt, he could break or tie the sack record today. So you basically kind of just throw that out there. Not many other players have really come close to matching that impact. There's other guys you could mention, but I'm going with TJ Watt. All right, let's take a look at some playoff scenarios here before we run out of time. By the way, I forgot to mention one other thing that's just beyond pathetic about the Giants and just kind of goes to show you just how awful things are for them right now. Reporting has been pointing out how the Giants won't have a full 53-man roster today in their game against Washington Football. The reason being, they'll only have 51 players, by the way. Beans, stop. She's biting this cable. Hey, stop. She's so bad with that shit. Leave it alone. Get away from there. Only 51 players on the Giants active roster today. They've got $279,000 of cap space. So they won't even be able to fill 2 roster spots today. Yes, they've had a lot of injuries, but how amazing is that? How amazing is that? All right, let's run through the playoff scenarios. We've only got a few minutes left. This is week 18 here in the NFL, obviously, that one extended week schedule. So this is it. Final dance. Here's the race for the NFC playoff spots. The New Orleans Saints, will clinch the playoffs with a win and a 49ers loss. The 49ers clinch with a win or a Saints loss. So the Saints and 49ers, Did I kind of say that in a stupid way? Are they playing each other? You'd think I'd be more on top of this. No, the Saints are playing the Falcons. So basically, they're watching each other's game, and they're also kind of trying to get in. The Cardinals clinched the NFC West with a win and a Rams loss. The Rams clinched the NFC with a win or a Cardinals loss. So those are the scenarios with the NFC. The AFC, the Ravens will clinch a playoff spot with a win and a Colts loss and a Chargers loss and a Dolphins loss. The Colts clinch with a win, or if the Steelers lose and the Chargers lose and the Dolphins win. All right. So, I mean, there's some kind of muddy, murky things going on here. The Raiders clinch if they win. So they're win or in. Here's the thing. That's the thing. The Colts win, they're in. Okay. The Raiders win, they're in. The Chargers win, they're in. They can also tie the Chargers. And then the Steelers win. They get in, I should say, if they win and the Colts lose and the Chargers and Raiders doesn't end in a tie. All right. So, I mean, some of these teams need help. Like the Ravens need help. The Steelers need help. The Chargers can get in on their own. The Raiders get in on their own. The Colts get in on their own. And then obviously you still have the number one playoff seeding up for grabs with both the Titans and Chiefs, as the Titans get that AFC number one seed and the first round bye. Don't forget, there's only the one first round bye now with the changing playoff structure. If the Titans win, they clinch the first seed. If the Chiefs win, or if the Titans lose, I should say, they'll get the number one playoff seed. So I'm looking at this a little bit backwards here. I don't know why ESPN printed it out this way, but the Chiefs are the ones that are looking at the ability to basically, get the number one seed regardless. The Titans need to win and then also have the Chiefs lose. AFC East title, that's coming down to Patriots and Bills. If the Bills win or the Patriots lose, then they're the AFC East champions because they got the edge on New England right now. But if the Patriots win and Buffalo loses, then the Patriots can still win the AFC East title. So there you have it. Those are those playoff scenarios. And we get closer to the playoffs in the National Football League. So it's down to this week 18. And I've really appreciated everybody joining us here on this journey as we've covered all the games. It started out as a kind of like Sunday night wrap-up show and turned into this pregame show that was really nice for me. I'm going to turn this off and go watch the Giants' first play of the game, in which they'll probably be, sack fumbled, and, WFT will take it back for a touchdown, and I'll say, all right, good. I saw to the extent of the game what I really wanted to say. Because that's what you can expect to basically have happen with those New York Football Giants. So anyway, thanks a lot for joining us here on Contending Football, not only today, but this entire season. My name is James Flippin. Check us out on The Contender with all our other programs. And also, I just like to say thank you to Colorcast. This has really been a lot of fun, being able to simulcast our program like that. Go check out the Colorcast app in the App Store and Google Play, and you can check us, The Contender, out at the same exact spot. I'm James Flippin. See you next year.